So MCU Phase 4 is wrapped up, coming to the conclusion with Wakanda Forever. So I wanted to jump in and do a ranking of all 8 TV shows that we have gotten thus far. And that includes WandaVision, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Hawkeye, What If, She-Hulk, Moon Knight, Loki, Miss Marvel. And that's not really in any particular order, I just named them at random. But we're gonna jump into it, and I'm gonna be working backwards from number 8 to the best Marvel TV show that we have gotten so far. So number 8, and by far the worst, and this is my opinion, which is of course the right opinion, even though I know a lot of people don't agree with me, and that is Moon Knight. Moon Knight is easily in my opinion, the worst Marvel TV show that we have gotten. Now I'm not going to be doing very extensive reviews or breakdowns or video essays or whatever in this video, of course. I do have, for the vast majority of these shows, more extensive 10 to 20 minute videos, and I will be putting those up here anytime we get to one that I have talked about in the past. But anyway, Moon Knight was a huge letdown. I had so many high hopes going into this show when it was first announced. I am a huge fan of the Moon Knight comics. They're very dark and gritty, and Marvel had promised Moon Knight being the first venture we would get into the horror genre, saying that there were very scary scenes in this, and I was excited going into it. But honestly, being the little bitch boy that I am, there's nothing scary about this. There's one or two kind of cool, darker, grittier scenes, but they weren't scary. And they're very few and far between. More often than not, this show's just goofy more than anything. On top of that, there's slow burns, which can often be a good thing, especially when it comes to the introduction of a new character like this. And then there's what Moon Knight did, was give us 4 episodes of almost nothing that just drug on for the entire hour that you were stuck watching it before something happened in episode 5, and then it picked up speed a lot. But there's no Moon Knight in this Moon Knight show, and I understand when you get origin stories, oftentimes the hero won't get into their super suit until the 2nd or the 3rd act of a movie. But Moon Knight is 6 hours long, and in the entirety of that we might get Moon Knight for like 20 minutes. And granted, yeah, he's super cool when he gets on screen, but up until the very end of the show where you actually get some decent fight sequences, anytime that something cool happens with Moon Knight, we cut it through time away from the main character to when he goes into Moon Knight and then he comes back out. And that serves the nice purpose of him being confused about this double life that he's leading. But we know he's leading this double life. Let us see these cool sequences throughout these 4 episodes instead of just the aftermath happening and us being like, oh shit, that would have been cool, you know? But then after all of this build-up, what it really comes to in the end, and what it comes to in most Marvel shows, is a huge 3rd act fight between 2 gods just in the background while there's a smaller fight going on. But really, it comes down to this fight between these gods, and that's not what this show was. It was a bit smaller scale, and you're going to realize going forward that that's a common problem among these TV shows. But other TV shows handle that problem better, or I don't care about that because the rest of the TV was so amazing. But this show was tiny in scale and adventuring out into these newer, broader concepts that I enjoyed, but just kind of shit the bed at the end because it had this huge, large-scale fight that made no sense in the context of this TV show where I just wanted to see Moon Knight do something cool.
What the fuck is this?
What? What?
What the fuck is this? This is garbage.
It's beautiful.
All that being said, Oscar Isaac was a highlight of this show. I really enjoyed him. He was a phenomenal actor. Every single part that he played in this show, switching back and forth between the personalities, was brilliant. And I hope we see him again in the future. But the idea of Moon Knight interacting with anybody else in the MCU is very jarring. He doesn't seem like he fits into the rest of the MCU, just like this show doesn't seem like it fits in with the rest of the MCU. So we'll see where it goes, but for me, Moon Knight is easily the bottom of the list when it comes to all these shows. Next up, we have She-Hulk Attorney at Law. the final TV show that we are getting in Phase 4. And, oh God, how do I say this? Because this is a show that I will admit is remarkably difficult to talk about on the internet, but I do think the consensus lies that this thing sucked. This could have been a cool show. It had a much more episodic structure to where each episode was a bit more standalone, where the rest of the MCU shows operated more like a long movie, like a 5 to 6 hour movie that sometimes worked well, but other times just felt like there's too much filler, and maybe it should have just been a movie. Whereas She-Hulk was trying to operate like an attorney show where each episode followed one specific court case, or maybe it was over 2 episodes and each problem presented in the beginning of the episode was solved at the end. The issue with that is that Marvel admits that they're ass at writing courtroom scenes. So anytime they were in a courtroom, it's unbelievable and makes no sense. And after watching Better Call Saul and then going to this, which is supposed to be top tier television by Marvel, one of the biggest industries in all of Hollywood, it sucks. And maybe, just maybe, if you can't write courtroom scenes, get writers that can or don't make a court drama. You know what I mean?
God! I'm surrounded by idiots!
And some of the problems that people had with the show I didn't really have. The CGI wasn't that bad. The first couple episodes was a little weird, especially seeing She-Hulk next to regular Hulk, Banner Hulk. It was a bit jarring, but after a while I get used to it, especially when Banner's not in the show anymore. Now, Wong was really cool. I enjoyed every moment that Wong was in this.
For Mr. Wong,
Just Wong, the Sorcerer Supreme, master of the mystic arts, leader and former librarian of Kamatage.
yeah, you realize that you've just admitted to facilitating a prisoner escape, which is a crime.
I must depart.
And I did actually have a pretty good laugh once in a while. And with the introduction of Daredevil in the last couple episodes, I actually rather liked the character of Daredevil. What I didn't like was them kind of feeling like they were undermining Daredevil or the original show, or shitting on it in a sense. There's this specific scene that comes to mind when She-Hulk and Daredevil are teaming up, and Daredevil gets in this hallway with a bunch of bad guys, and it slows down and some cool music kicks in, and it reminds you of the best scene in like all of television history when Daredevil is fighting down that hallway. I spent in my Daredevil video probably 4 minutes just talking about the awesomeness of this scene. And then it undermines it by having She-Hulk just smash down and be like, hey, you're taking too much time, let me handle this. And I hated that. It felt like it was purposefully insulting the Daredevil TV show and that scene. And then at the end of the show, where she breaks the fourth wall, and I didn't mind the fourth wall breaks. It feels like a good primer for when Deadpool comes in. And She-Hulk was breaking the fourth wall in comics before Deadpool even existed. So I didn't mind the fourth wall breaks. What I did mind was when she popped out of the Disney Plus menu and went in and she made fun of all the MCU TV shows. And it was kind of like, hey, doesn't the story make no sense? Why is this building to this? The third act awfully sucks. And she's like, hey, don't all the third acts suck in Marvel shows and movies? Maybe we should not do that. Maybe we should wrap this up cleanly, because this is my show. And that if I'm watching a Marvel show now, all I can think is, hey, these writers are aware that this is a problem. They called it out and made fun of themselves in She-Hulk. So it undermines all the other Marvel properties. And going forward, you're going to just be thinking about that scene where they're aware of themselves, which I don't really mind the third act problems. Marvel movies are generally a solid C+ to B+ movie, with the occasional spectacular one and the occasional bad one. But I don't mind the third act because they're decent. They're always decent. And sometimes you'll get a phenomenal one. And Marvel is structured, and they all kind of operate on the same basis. But that's okay. But now it has me thinking that it's not okay, and this show's gonna be in my fucking head now. And on top of that, throughout this show, they were building to this ending. They could have done the ending better, but there was a plot structure with the people attacking her out on the street and trying to get her blood. And then there was that whole episode about that guy that tricked her into having a relationship so he could steal her blood. And then that creepy guy that was clearly a misogynist.
Wakanda Forever!
Oh, that makes me uncomfortable.
It was all building towards something. So now that in the end she's like, hey, this plot sucks. So you're like, hey, are you making fun of me for watching this whole show, even though the plot sucks? Anyway, yeah, This is more ranty than Moon Knight. Moon Knight was number 8 instead of number 7 because I expected a lot from Moon Knight. I didn't really expect anything from She-Hulk, so I wasn't as let down. So there we go. She-Hulk, number 7. Coming in at number 6, we have What If.
And ponder the question, what if?
This is going to be a much shorter segment. What If isn't bad. It's not. There were some episodes that were better than others. There were some that were standouts. There were others that I felt like I could have skipped entirely. It served a good purpose for what it was, which was a standalone property that was meant to kind of get us used to the idea of multiverses and different characters and different storylines that happen, so that as Marvel gets into a lot more of this multiverse settings that it's having with Phase 4 and 5 and 6 that it's all building to with Kang and these, that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to prime us for that and get us used to the multiverse. And you could make an argument that watching the show better helped you understand Evil Doctor Strange and the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness movie, because Evil Doctor Strange was kind of introduced in this, but really, you don't need this at all. It might give you a little bit of background, but it doesn't improve the experience of watching Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness at all. But this isn't a bad show. It's just kind of throwaway. I'm not ever going to rewatch it. They put out other seasons out. I might watch it just because it's interesting. But having different voice actors for like Tony Stark takes me out of it a little bit.
Yeah, peace. I love peace. I'd be out of a job with peace.
But it's okay. It's not bad. It's okay. It's forgettable. Coming in at number 5 is The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And I'm going to be a little bit of a contrarian here and say that I kind of enjoyed The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It wasn't like one of the best shows, obviously. I have it at number 5 here. But I think that I had a good time while watching it. And I loved the character dynamics and the chemistry. I liked the furthering of the world development after the snap. This is really the only show or movie that attempted at least to show you the effects of the world as a whole after the snap and after everybody came back, and how everybody was affected during the 5-year span when half of the universe was gone. Endgame was this massive pinnacle point in Marvel and in this entire universe where for 5 years half the world was gone, and we never really got to see what the overarching problems and scenarios and solutions were for those problems within the world. And I want to see more of it. And nothing has really attempted to show us that. In fact, as Phase 4 has gone along, they've gone out of their way to not mention the snap and not mention Thanos. And I understand they're trying to move on from that to get to the new plot within the MCU. But we were building to Endgame for over a decade. And I would have liked to have seen the ramifications of all of that buildup afterwards, and at least Falcon and the Winter Soldier attempted to show me that. On top of that, the chemistry between Sam and Bucky was absolutely remarkable. I loved the more down-to-earth moments where they were just building their friendship and building a boat down with Sam's family or in therapy.
Why didn't you use the metal arm?
Well, I don't always think of it immediately. I'm right-handed.
I loved the character arc of Bucky trying to become a better person, and the story of him eventually telling that old man that he killed his son years ago was moving and nearly brought me to tears, which honestly these days, ever since it became apparent, is not hard to do. I will be honest.
I'm in a glass case of emotion!
Zemo is like my all-time favorite villain. He was really, really cool in Age of Ultron because he was not one of the big 3 that they talk about in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
I have a feeling they might be a part of the big 3.
What big 3?
The big 3.
What big 3?
Androids, aliens, and wizards.
That's not a thing.
That's definitely a thing.
No, it's not.
Every time we fight one of the 3.
So who are you fighting now, Gandalf?
How do you know about Gandalf?
I read The Hobbit in 1937 when it first came out.
He was just some normal guy that pitted the heroes against each other, and then this, it fleshes them out a lot more. This is nothing amazingly spectacular, but it was a solid show. Now, that being said, there were parts of this that droned on, because this probably, of everything, should have been maybe 2 movies, you know? I don't think they could have done it in 1 movie, but maybe it should have been done in 2 movies. So it did drone on quite a bit. There was a bit too much flying around the world and trying to be globetrotting in this that at times it was a little bit jarring. John Walker, the new Captain America, after doing so many atrocities, within like half hour of the final episodes, was like joking around with the main characters. I was like, I don't like that. This guy's fucking assholes. Quit joking around with them. You moved on too quickly. Hold them accountable. And then in the end, what knocks so many points off is that 5-minute dogshit speech that Sam gives about being better and how they can be better. And also, his suit sucks. Please, for the love of God, Wakanda, make him a better looking suit. But as you can tell, I didn't hate the show. I actually enjoyed it. There's some parts of it that I really, really liked. And from here on in this list is stuff that I liked a lot. Really, the only 2 that I did not like at all and will never watch again and kind of hated watching while I was watching, or the bottom 2, What If Is Okay. And this one is more good than bad, and everything past this is like real solid television in my opinion. It's just solid MCU and some of my favorite MCU once we get to the top. But let's move on to number 4, which is Miss Marvel. Now, Miss Marvel was one of the most unique shows in the entirety of the MCU. Actually, I think it would be the most unique show that we have gotten so far in the MCU. And I loved almost every moment of watching this. And this is truly like a great teenage family friends drama that becomes a pretty great starter superhero flick as well. Kamala Khan is a phenomenal stand-in for like the Marvel fans. Like she is a YouTuber that makes videos about Marvel, which, you know, I am intimately familiar with. So seeing her just being as much of a fan as everybody else is was really cool. And being like a specific fan of the Avengers, who are the biggest celebrities in the world on there, and seeing this perspective where they are kind of acknowledging in the MCU just the fan base that these heroes have. With like Avengers Con and the fact that Ant-Man has like his own podcast, which of course he would. And like the first couple episodes of this show just captured me so much because it has such like an Edgar Wright feel to where the world is so incredibly unique and vibrant, and you're almost seeing things from her crazy perspective where texts are displayed on the screen and like in the neon signs of stores. And it gets like that again towards the end of the show. The middle of it is a little more weak, which I noticed once I went back and read about the episodes, is that the same director that directed the first couple episodes directed the last couple, so it makes sense why the middle is a little bit weaker. They should have just kept the same director throughout all of it, and I think this show may have been number 1 or number 2 on my list. It's really just that middle of the show and the villains, which I'll get to, that dragged it down to number 4. Now, where this show really excels is the family drama within this Pakistani American family and the different worlds that Kamala Khan is being pulled in between, trying to figure out who she is. Is she Pakistani? Is she American? Is she a jinn? Is she human, or is she mutant? She has these superpowers, but she doesn't know what to do with it because it makes her feel weird, but it's all she's ever wanted. And the dynamics between her friends and the mosque, and these rights issues that are explored on this level that we don't get to see. That is the interesting part of this. Honestly, the superhero aspects of this might be the least interesting part of this show and the weakest parts of this show. I think if this was made just as a coming of age film about a young Pakistani girl that was struggling to figure out who she was, it'd be like Oscar award winning. It's so good. And when she first gets her powers, which by the way, I don't mind the power change. I read the Miss Marvel comics. They're very good. Her powers are stretchy powers and like transforming powers in the comics. And this, they gave her cosmic powers. I'm fine with that. The power scaling would have been really weird on the screen. And with Mr. Fantastic coming soon, it'd be weird to have 2 stretchy individuals. And Mr. Fantastic is more well known. And giving her cosmic powers just helps her fit in more, especially if she's going to be alongside Miss Marvel in a new Marvel's movie. So it's fine. It works. It's whatever. When she gets her powers and she's like so incredibly bad at them, and her fighting style is much more defensive throughout this because she is so bad at them. And you see like a great montage where she trains, but even when she's done training, obviously she's new to this. She can't defeat anybody. Towards the end of the show, though, we do get like a standalone episode where it goes back in time and we learn about partition, something that I did not know anything about. It was not taught to me in school. And then throughout this episode, I learned more about it than I'd ever heard before. And I went and read about partition and enlightened myself. And this is a phenomenal episode. Like, just an entire standalone episode about the difficulties of partition and why it is difficult to be Pakistani and Pakistani American and the history that they have that was not all that long ago for their families. It was really a beautiful and insightful episode, and unlike anything we've seen in the MCU. What made this show fall apart for me was the end, because like I was saying, this was a down-to-earth family drama show that I think should have kept to the family drama and solved itself through the family drama. And that should have been the overarching problem of this. And maybe the Jinn thing should have been solved more with communication, which sounds boring, but the third act just had to come in and third act like it always does in every Marvel. And that is by all of a sudden being like, hey, these Jinn are going to destroy our world with their universe and dissolve it, and everybody in our universe is going to die. And in that moment, I was like, oh, fuck. They did it again, didn't they? They made a plot line for the third act where the difficult problem is that the villain wants to destroy the world. In this show, of all things, the villain's going to destroy the world, and Miss Marvel has to prevent them from destroying the world. So, everything else was phenomenal, but that really kind of brought me out of it. Also, kind of side thing, she has too many love interests in this. Like, she's got like 4 love interests, you know?
Why don't you mind your own business, you old fuck?
Number 3 that I have on my list, and funnily enough, I'm not actually going to talk about this one that much, is Loki. And I know a lot of people have Loki as their #1 show. They think this is the best thing in all of Marvel. And yeah, this show's phenomenal. It's number 3 for me. It was almost number 2. But, you know, I have my opinion, which once again is the right opinion. Now, Loki was very good. And I will say the only thing that has brought it down from 1 to 2 and then from 2 to 3 is the fact that I feel like the rest of Marvel that has come after Loki has undermined a lot of Loki. I loved the fact that Loki was completely outside of the Marvel Universe. It explored the side character that grew to be a fan favorite. And I was worried that Loki himself could not carry a TV show by himself. But Tom Hiddleston does a phenomenal job, and this is so fun. And I think, I've said in the past that I think that in the future they could explore with multiple seasons, kind of like a Doctor Who time jumping little adventure problem solving thing with Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston. I don't know if they're going to do that, but holy shit, would that be like a fun overarching thing throughout all of Marvel going forward? Just like this background thing of, you know, time crime fighting Loki. But the chemistry between Loki and Sylvie was like one of the highlights of this show, which obviously it should be. It's Loki and just Lady Loki basically, and I loved their weird relationship where they kind of fell in love with each other because they're themselves and nobody loves Loki more than Loki. Owen Wilson was a supreme standout of this. Please give him his jet ski. He absolutely deserves it, you monsters.
I'm Agent Mobius. It's so hot right now.
And the final episode where Kang the Conqueror was introduced, and they made the brave decision of just having this entire last episode being incredibly captivating, but just talking, like just these 3 people sitting in a room talking basically. The only reason that this has fallen from grace for me is I feel like Marvel has undermined this. This show served to introduce us to multiple universes and timelines and how these timelines can go off and why they haven't in the past, but why shit's gonna hit the fan in the future with the Kang the Conqueror no longer being there controlling everything and keeping everything in time, and multiple hymns coming through and yada 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 and so on and so forth, because we thought, oh, this is what caused the multiverse to happen and everything to get fucked. Loki caused this, Sylvie caused this, Kang caused this, but then, you know, maybe Spider-Man caused this, maybe Wanda caused this. As we've gone forward, there have been so many different ways that people have ventured in the multiverse, different things that have happened that have caused the multiverse to fracture open and bleed into our world, that it's like, wait, what was it? Was it Loki? What was it? Doctor Strange? Was it Spider-Man? Was it Wanda? What happened? I thought this was why. Maybe those are why. And I feel like they've just undermined this and made this less impactful. All that being said though, it was still very fun, very emotional. It served to flesh out Loki even more, even though he was already so fleshed out, but it was just very, very cool. Number 2 is WandaVision, the very first MCU show we ever got.
Together, 1 + 1 is family. WandaVision.
But watching WandaVision in the moment was one of the coolest experiences. It's a mystery. It's so fucking cool. When you start it out, you're wondering what is going on with this weird like old-timey television show, and then it progresses through the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and so on until we get to modern times. And every single episode, in the beginning, you're trying to figure out, why is this happening? What the fuck is even going on? And then it starts to slowly get revealed that Wanda is causing this and like enslaving this town, and Vision is the one that uncovers it. And then eventually you pop out and you see that Sword is trying to get in there, but they can't take Wanda down as she has this bubble around this whole entire town. And she's battling with her grief of losing Vision, and this Vision is just a figment of her imagination. Throughout this, what was so cool was when you go on like Reddit and Twitter, it's just endless theorizing, and sometimes to the detriment of the show, where you've convinced yourself and other people have convinced you that, oh my god, we're gonna see Mr. Fantastic on this show, and then you don't. It's the most fun I've had in a community setting discussing a television show ever. Trying to unravel the mystery in real time, week to week with people, was such a goddamn experience. Them capturing the essence of all of these TV shows and these decades of television within each episode of WandaVision. I loved Malcolm in the Middle growing up, and watching the episode in this that was based off that was so nostalgic. And then at the end, we don't have to talk about it because I've talked about it multiple times. You have the big third act where she fights Agatha and she's, shooting magic around and whatever. I didn't mind it. It was cool. The show had to wrap up somehow. Wanda truly made herself like a villain in this, and everybody was excusing her, and it was like, no, she's a villain. She's a villain now. Maybe she'll redeem herself in the end. Maybe she can pull a good old Zuko.
Hello, Zuko here.
Make us like her eventually, but it proved this was her villain arc. She came back in Doctor Strange as a cold-blooded murderer. And honestly, super brave of Marvel to make this their inaugural show for Disney Plus, just because of the sheer originality and weirdness of it. And now number 1 should be pretty obvious if you're keeping track of which shows I have already talked about, is Hawkeye. This one is probably not a lot of people's favorite show. It is pretty normal. But honestly, that's what I loved about it. I loved the normality of this. This was just a Christmas show taking place over 6 days where Clint Barton and Kate Bishop had to solve a problem, a very street level problem of the tracksuit mafia and the Ronin suit, and cleaning up their mess so that Clint could get home to his family on Christmas Day. And it was the introduction of Kate Bishop, which, by the way, I love the Hawkeye comics. The Matt Fraction run of Hawkeye, where Kate Bishop is introduced, is one of the best runs in all of Marvel, and this show sticks to it really well. And the introduction of Kate Bishop in this show is the perfect introduction that we have had of any new character. Introducing a new character this way, where she and Clint are basically a double lead in this show, and we get to know her alongside one of the Avengers that we know and love, kind of, and understand that Clint is not one of the most loved Avengers. But anyway.
We haven't met yet. I'm Clint.
I don't care.
Getting to know her alongside another Avenger, where that Avenger comes to love this character, and we love that Avenger. Now we learn to love this character alongside them because they already have a connection within the Avengers. It's the same way with Yelena Belova and Natasha Romanoff. We now like Yelena because we like Natasha. Yelena is amazing. It's Florence Pugh. It's impossible not to like Florence Pugh, but it certainly helped.
This thing that you do when you whip your hair when you're fighting with the arm and the hair.
I also like that within this, they're both Hawkeye. They make it abundantly clear. Clint calls Kate Hawkeye. Kate calls Clint Hawkeye. They both exist in this world as Hawkeye. It's very clear that Clint is like training her to become the new like primary Hawkeye, so maybe he can like officially retire. But let's go back to the small stakes of this show. They are fighting the tracksuit mafia. Nothing is smaller stakes throughout Marvel than these fucking doofuses of a mafia. And granted, in the end, we get Kingpin. But again, this is like New York level problems, street level problems, nothing galactic or cosmic or time problems. This is just a mafia boss that these two lower end superheroes have to take down with their bows and arrows and wits and grit. But throughout this, I'm laughing my ass off. Every single moment that Haley Steinfeld is on screen with the gruff Jeremy Renner, Clint Barton character and bouncing off of them, and she's just slowly chipping away his rough exterior to get him to love her so that he admits that they are partners together. And it's wholesome and it's fun and it's a great Christmas romp, and I throw it on and I'm enjoying all the scenes where they're just sitting around and chatting, but I'm also enjoying the car chase action sequences where they're being badasses. And then Yelena eventually comes in, and Yelena and Kate have some of the best on-screen chemistry of two new characters within the MCU.
Hi. I made macaroni if you want some.
And after this, if they don't make a new Hawkeye and Black Widow team-up movie with Kate Bishop as the new Hawkeye and Yelena Belova as the new Black Widow, Marvel's out of their goddamn mind, because they're just on fire together. They're so great. And they may have fumbled the bag a little bit with Kingpin in the end, but I'm okay with that. At least they fumbled the bag with stakes that made sense and an ending that you saw coming, but you loved when you got there. And the final battle where they're just fighting in the ice rink is, yeah, it has the Marvel third act fight sequence, but it's not a problem in this one because it's a fight sequence that was properly built to and on the power level that makes sense of this show. Unlike WandaVision, for example, in my number 2 pick, where it didn't really feel like it built to that, and then they were just firing magic at each other in the sky. So Hawkeye is my number 1. I literally just rewatched the whole show the other day because I was like, I can't think of anything to watch. You know what? Hawkeye, unironically, is one of my all-time favorite shows, and it feels weird to pick Hawkeye as my favorite show. It feels like picking like Harry Potter is my favorite book series if somebody asks what my favorite book is. Like, yeah, it's Harry Potter. Of course you like it. It's an MCU show. Of course you like it. But this show's great. I love it. And it's such an easy watch, but so amazing at the same time. And I cannot wait for more Kate Bishop. She is a highlight so far for me in Phase 4. This muddled, weird, honestly overwhelming, oversaturated, fumbling all over the place Phase 4. Hawkeye was a huge standout golden point for me so far. That's it. That's my list. That's my 8 to 1, my worst to best of all the MCU Phase 4 shows. I hope you agreed. If you didn't, let me know. If you did agree, let me know. We can discuss it. I'm always very active in the comments. But thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Check out my other videos.